everybody. Welcome to the Conservative Take. My name is Kyle, and as you can see, we have Nicole back on the show to talk about something positively for probably the first time ever, Nicole, on the show. Usually it's us or me in panic mode on the ledge having Nicole talk me off of it. So, Nicole, before we get started, I'm going to just off the top, I'm going to just run through about 5 words here related to the topic of this particular episode. And I just want to get your first word association to these words here. Okay, how about this? Let's start with women's sports.
Back.
Great. How about executive orders?
Badly needed. Or one word, necessary.
No, that's fine. That's fine. First,
necessary.
Fine. That's necessary. Yeah, that's
necessary.
And by the way, we didn't practice this at all. This is totally off.
No, this is totally, this is organic.
Here's an easy one. Inauguration.
Beautiful.
And I'll leave the last one here. I won't go too hard. Doge.
Ratchet.
Great. Yeah. I brought those words up, Nicole, because as you know, prior to this particular episode, we had a hard 4 years. I mean, everything that transpired, the assassination attempts, the indictments, the impeachments, going back beyond 4 years, actually 8 years for that matter. And we talked about this in other episodes that you've come on for, to talk about how us, me in particular, to be selfish, have had to deal with the ramifications of all of this negativity. And so today, here we are, those responses there to those particular terms I brought up, and the reaction that I can see in your face and in my heart and the audience who are watching this, that's what this show's all about. So welcome to the show, Nicole. Tell people who you are and also talk about what your thoughts were when I mentioned to you about this particular topic of this particular live or recording that we're doing.
Oh, definitely. Okay. So one, thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Kaufman. I am the therapist and founder of High Performance Counseling. I do individual counseling with adults who are action-oriented and goal-directed. And really, I am the therapist for patriots. I am the therapist for capitalists. I am the therapist for entrepreneurs and those of us on this side of the aisle that are all about leveling up and performing better. And that's a little unusual for my profession. So I'm a little more Jordan Peterson than most. So here we are. Absolutely. I think this is the first time we've gotten together post-inauguration. I believe that's right. Yeah. And I couldn't be happier and more relieved. All of the emotions. I'm a therapist, so we're just going to talk about feelings. Relieved comes to mind, ebullient, effusive, excited, elated, all of the E words for feelings is where I'm at now. And only by contrast have I realized that this last 4 years has been more or less a nightmare on repeat, for lack of a better metaphor. And the amount of relief I feel at this point and is really tenable in a way. How about you?
Yeah, I could not agree more there, Nicole. In fact, here's what I was going to say before we got on live. I didn't want to spoil that because I wanted it to be kind of spontaneous as much as possible. Was that, the whole thing, if someone had told me in the middle of his first term, after after that whole debacle with the election, with just the turmoil with J6 and all of that, which, by the way, I have yet to watch any of the footage of J6. I just recently watched him leaving the White House for the first time just about a week ago. I watched all that footage because it was too painful for me to even consider watching prior to that, because I didn't think in the future he would have the opportunity to come back.
Right.
And Nicole, I'm telling you, I mean, have you seen that footage of him leaving the White House?
No, I won't watch it. Yeah, no, that would have been sad for me.
You should watch it. You should watch it. It's really cool because even Trump at that point in time, he was thinking about his legacy. He gave a speech. I'm not sure where he was. I think maybe he'd been at Andrews or joint base Andrews. And he had this music playing. I forget what song it was. But as he was playing and it was taking off, the plane, the song ended as he was circling around. It was timed perfectly. So as he's all going off in the sunset, the music of the song ended. Okay. And you could tell just Trump has this sense of himself and of the moment and how to maximize that. We saw that a little bit yesterday when he did the signing with all the little girls coming. He saw the opportunity and said, "Hey, why don't you come gather around me?" He just knows about the moment. And I'm getting off topic here. But getting back to what I was saying was that I didn't realize that this moment would be here. So I couldn't think about that. I just thought, Nicole, that there's no way that he can go out like this. There's got to be another moment in his career that's going to be bigger than this. That's going to crescendo to a point that's going to give I guess what's that term when you do royalty and you give them something?
Residuals.
It's a moment that happens when it's a moment in time when you basically come back from where you were, and it's a really crescendo point in your career and your life. I thought that moment was coming. And so, but I guess to see it happening and then looking back at it now is really, really fulfilling. But if anyone had told me that I would have had to have gone through 4 years of hell, like you just said, to get to this point, I'm not sure, I would have been wanting to do it. And number two, if I could have actually mentally survived that whole process. So what are your thoughts in my thinking about that? Because as I'm going through and looking at old footage and trying to, what am I doing actually? What am I doing with this? What am I trying to do?
Well, I mean, so I think part of what you're looking at and part of what I think the American people at large are experiencing, because, I mean, let's face it, he got the majority vote, he got a mandate, so you're not the only person who feels this way. But Trump's reemergence and coming back onto the stage in, bigger and better than ever, more prepared, sharper, surrounded by even better people before, because he wasn't hiring spectacularly well in his first term. This appeals greatly to Americans and anybody's sense of fairness and justice. And we love to see the whole David Goliath kind of parable work itself out, where David overcomes, right? And we see it in all kind of parables and Greek history, all of the different ways that somebody of a supposed lesser nature overcomes what appear to be impenetrable greater forces. And I mean, we love that hero narrative. We love it. I mean, it's all over our comic books. It's in our Greek mythology. And now we are seeing it play out in real time in our lifetime. And it speaks to people's sense of justice and sense of fairness. And for a lot of people, I think it also affirms people's reality. And that is a huge one, because I feel like, and that is why, and sorry for the long answer, but so many people voted for this man this time around because they felt like he was the only person that had a thumb on reality. This last administration was so out of touch with parents, with the economy, with the border issue, with foreign policy, with so many things that we didn't understand them, and we felt misunderstood. And therein lies the appeal to Donald J. Trump as a person, as a leader, because, you know, my man was making fries at McDonald's. He gets us. He gets who we are. And he has that je ne sais quoi. He's got the swag. He's got the charisma to harness the moment, you know, harness the optics. He's great at optics and leverage it. And that's, you know, unlike anybody that I've ever seen in terms of a president that we've had. The only person who really came close, I felt like, was Reagan back in the 80s. And I was itty bitty at that point. I was so young. Right?
Yeah, Reagan was cool. Reagan was cool.
Yeah.
And I love the word you used there. You said leveraging optics.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what he's doing. And I didn't even think about that, but you're exactly right. Mm-hmm. And I think to me, what that means is, you may have a different opinion of this, but what that means, like, to me, is that his charisma is such that it's so endearing. Mm-hmm. For instance, that photo op, I'm going to be transparent here more than normal. I watched that video of him signing that particular executive order with those little girls over his shoulder, and I cried like a baby. Mm-hmm. Because I am thinking, and it goes back to my other point here that you brought up about reality. And we had that whole thing about gaslighting. We had that great episode you did on gaslighting. I'll leave a link below here about how that's a form of mental abuse. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, these little girls, I mean, it was just so sweet. There's one little girl right here to my left here, over his shoulder, looking over him, signing it. It's just the cutest, most endearing thing I could imagine. And that, to me, is leveraging the optics, right? I mean, you can't mess with that. Picture is so freaking awesome. And by the way, that word I'm looking for is called coronation.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I figured there'd be a coronation moment at some point. You can't just go out like this, flying off in the sunset, really embarrassed, discredited, shamed. Yeah. He tried to make the most of it, but it was sad. Watching it. But yeah, I can watch it now. So anyway, yeah. So I mean, yeah,
he's back, and it's almost like your hero walking off in the sunset, right? There's an old West, all the spaghetti Westerns and stuff, the hero that comes to town. Shane.
Oh yeah, Pale Rider. You see Pale Rider?
Yeah.
Another one.
It's a trope that is old and tried and true, but we love it. It appears to us, and he's back, baby. He's back, right? And that's the thing. And to look back at where we were and what we endured for the last 4 years. They just released 60 minutes of the unedited Kamala interview. It was painful, absolutely painful to listen to. I could only get to minute mark 29 and 22. And I just can't. We dodged a bullet in a bigly. We dodged a bullet. I think everybody knows that. But, people feel like they're being heard, and, and what he's doing right now with Doge, one of our, words from the top of the segment, what he's doing with that, it's what everybody does at the beginning of the year. Okay, we overspent at Christmas. What do? We're going to tighten up our budgets, get rid of what we don't need, cut out subscriptions, get our house in order. He's doing exactly what the American people is doing, and they're going line by line and getting rid of the fraud and waste. Thank you. We've been told for years, like, well, it's government. Well, your taxpayer dollars at work, and we were just supposed to take it. And now it's actually happening. 20,000 workers have taken that little parachute out of their jobs. Fantastic. And, will there be, price wars or tariff wars, or will there be some tightening of the belt? Maybe, but it's not going to be on a level of austerity, and it's not going to be draconian. I mean, we're not going to go without. I really don't think that we're going to go without because of these measures that have been taken. It's long overdue to get our fiscal house in order. And most American people, those who aren't legacy wealth or the top 3-5% of wealth in America, even they, I think, on some level, understand that without good fiscal responsibility, you don't have a company, you don't have wealth, right? And so most people understand that. So yeah, people felt heard and understood. That's huge. That's huge. And yeah, they feel like this president is talking to the common person, the guy that's getting fries at McDonald's. He's on a trash truck. That brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's not too good for that. He was like, well, what do you do with the fries? Okay. And then, let me see if I can get into this truck. And he even said the orange safety vest made him look thinner. I mean, Isn't that what we think about? I mean, this guy, right? Yeah. It is, you just want to sit down and have a beer with him.
Yeah. People think that he does have an ego, of course. He wants to win, but he doesn't mind self-deprecation. And the McDonald's, the garbage truck, but even if you go back to Saturday Night Live, when he did that one skit where he's like, it wasn't really a ingenious writing, where he's basically I think he's a person who comes in and he's mocking a person who's impersonating Donald Trump. So he's Donald Trump. That's like he's either a janitor or somebody else. And there's another person playing Donald Trump, and he's insulting the actor playing himself with the same talking points that people about his hairpiece, about this, and that. And he's like, he's mocking himself.
Yeah.
And this is back in the 90s, right? And it's like, so to me, that shows you that he doesn't, what I mean? He's a different kind of person. He understands that. And I think that's also him leveraging his optics. And I can get into him a lot because he used his own optics to get him out of bankruptcy. Because when when the 90s hit and his associates were killed in that helicopter crash, and they were the ones who were over the Jersey operations, the casinos, that's when his operation went down because the expertise was lost. Okay. And so anyway, when the 90s hit, he was going downhill. He had literally nothing hardly in terms of on paper, but he used what he had, and that was his name. And he used that to license out that, like you said, and he leveraged that so he could become back into business, which gave him The Apprentice and so on. So on. Exactly.
And on a clinical note, what I will say is for everybody out there, because the word narcissism or narcissist really came into colloquial, parlance. Everybody now knows what narcissism is. And narcissism, it has basically become a word for people that we don't like, right? An ex-boyfriend with a relationship that doesn't work out. Oh, well, all we have to say is he was a narcissist and we've got to pass, right? So Trump has been labeled a narcissist, specifically by the left, I think for years and years now. But here's the thing. Narcissists won't make fun of themselves. Narcissists are not charitable, right? Narcissists will not surround themselves with anybody they think is smarter than they are. They won't do it, right? So he just doesn't meet the clinical threshold for narcissism by any stretch. He's a strong leader, and he is more than likely low in agreeableness and low in politeness. And for that, people think he's rude, but he's actually not. People just don't like the blunt part of it, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care. that, being polite and not caring are actually two different things.
Well,
So,
it's, yeah.
Yeah. So, we can stop with the whole narcissist thing. And even everybody who was getting their knickers in a twist yesterday about him taking over Gaza, or saying that we needed to do something with it. And we're going to displace, or we're going to have, I think AOC called it ethnic cleansing. Give me a break. He's like, why would anybody want to live there? The place is horrible. This is a real estate magnate, right? He knows real estate. He knows location. Look at it. It's a burned out hovel full of buildings that are getting ready to fall down. Who would want to live there? I mean, it is humanitarian for him to want to move people out to try and rebuild it so that people can actually live there, right? And hello Egypt, hello Jordan. Just go ahead and take all those Palestinian people. You've been sympathetic to them in the past. Now it's time for Egypt and Jordan to step right up and do that. We'll go in and rebuild it, right? People who want to call him all these pejorative names are not seeing the big picture of who he actually is. And he certainly doesn't meet the clinical threshold for some of these, a rapist, what is he, a narcissist, or, antisocial, or a psychopath, or anything that these people want to call him. Or even doing dastardly deeds. I can't even think of what dastardly deeds he might be doing besides signing.
That was what Al Green said, right?
Yeah, the dastardly deeds.
With his cane. His cane was,
Yeah, that sounds so Dickensian, I guess, is the word. Dastardly deeds. Are we still saying? It's so old fashioned.
That's like those cartoon characters. With mustache, twirling it. Oh, the
dastardly deeds. Yeah, there's got to be some. There, Pepe Le Pew, or some old.
Bullwinkle had that guy. Bullwinkle and
Bullwinkle?
the two bad. Yeah.
That I think you're right. Very good. Yes, you are sharp as a tack. Awesome. All right. Anyway,
but that kind of leads into a little bit about our reaction, because you talked about reality and gaslighting, and how one of the reasons why Trump was able to actually win was because people were just tired of being gaslit. They understood that the media are lying, and they didn't believe any of that stuff for the reasons we just mentioned. So in terms of that, in terms of a MAGA person, myself, whatever, let's just talk about the fact that now it seems like the left is almost impenetrable now to get their message out in terms of trying to downplay what we're trying to do. It seems like now that we are now have the ability to, not only because we won the culture war for the most part, like we saw the one with Cat Williams. He talked to the one guy for like 4 minutes who was, he was basically saying that Phoenix is part of Mexico, and then Cat Williams basically just burned him for like 4 minutes on stage, screaming USA, USA, USA. Here you have this black comedian who normally would be a bastion for the left, but is now screaming USA, USA, getting the crowd going. It's almost like we don't care anymore what the left's saying. We're going to go forward full tilt. Is this a way that we are healing are we healing now as we speak now, and it's kind of coming to fruition? And if so, what does it look like for us just 6 months from now? I mean, how are we going to be as people, or the recovery time from where we were? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I agree with you. I think the how folks were treated over the last 4 years, we were thought policing, we were policing our speech, we were paying attention to triggering words, we were paying attention to pronouns, we were paying attention to skin color. Skin color had everything to do with everything, right? And so we were playing this kind of psychological hopscotch around all of these words and what did our words mean versus what we intended. I mean, it was this mental gymnastics that we had to plod through. And some of us stepped down landmines, right? Some people got canceled. Some people lost their jobs. Some people were bawled out in the public forum on Facebook or X or on, professional ball teams for expressing a certain point of view because you weren't allowed to do that anymore. And I think that became so suffocating and so deafening in our ears all the time that you had to police your speech. You can't say that, right? And that we finally just, I think, we're exhausted by it, and people just don't care anymore. And that's the thing, is that we knew that we weren't bad people if we used the wrong pronoun. We knew that we weren't, judging people by their skin color if we called them out on a meritocracy or emeritus type issue. Skin color didn't have anything to do with it. You're not qualified to be president of a university. You're not qualified to do this. So we knew what the reality was, but we were so convinced that our thinking was not true that, we just kind of, were forced into silence or submission. Well, finally, our voice was heard 4 years later, and we got to vote, and we voted that whole mindset out. And now we're in a mindset of transparency and finally of being validated and being heard. And after 4 years of invalidation and not being heard and actually being told, no, there are 16 different sexes and 75 different pronouns that somebody could use, and you must acknowledge and respect all of them. Quite frankly, what kind of Orwellian stuff is this? I mean, it was so beyond comprehension for most people. And as a result, now we're just like, okay, finally, it made people think that they were crazy. And that's the whole effect of gaslighting. When you keep telling somebody something over and over again, that they just start to think, okay, maybe I'm the one who just doesn't understand this, or maybe I'm the one who's crazy. So finally, people are like, oh, all right, so I wasn't wrong. Meritocracy is kind of a good thing, right? The border should be closed for all the reasons, right? And so it's going to take some time for us to be like, okay, oh, and they tried to shoot the man twice.
Right.
So, I'm telling you that, just as an aside, inauguration for me, I was so worried that day. I was so worried that something was going to happen. I can't even tell. It was all I could do to watch it. I was so worried that something would happen again. But anyway, so now that there's reason in the room, a couple of things. The left has to redefine who they are and what their message is, because it has gone so far left. And the fringe, ultra progressive part of the left is so loud now that it's basically tainted, all left-leaning people to seem like they are fringe, which they're not. Right. It would be like saying all Republicans are, far, far right, which we're not. And so they're going to have to redefine what that means. But now I think people are like, the majority of us think the way that, we don't have to police pronouns. We don't have to do this stuff anymore. And for all you people who are saying that we do, everybody's like, oh, pshaw. oh, we don't need to pay attention to that. And nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. You know, you can cry wolf all day long. Nothing's going to happen. Right. And it's going to take a while for people to kind of get over that. But, you know, some things need to break down. You know, Department of Education is one of them. All these USAID agencies, you know, that's another huge example of, you know, institutions that were well-funded and long, you know, supposedly they were working, that are just not working. And now we're just saying the quiet part out loud. People can appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're spot on there. I think one of the biggest problems was, like you said, or alluded to, is that we felt like we are in the minority, but the truth of it is that we're in the overwhelming majority. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, and one thing about wokeness, which is what I want to get into a little bit, and DEI in particular,
sure,
is that it's a self-defeating, non-sustainable type of thinking.
Absolutely.
It just can't, because what it does essentially is it divides the left and it unites the right. Mm-hmm. So if you take any of these crazy issues with the border, with women having to deal with men in their sports or whatever it may be.
Oh yeah.
You have one side of the Democrat or party, I guess, Democrat Party. A majority of them, believe it or not, don't agree with that. Like I say, maybe 60% Democrats probably would say, you know, that's a little bit too much. Maybe 70%, yeah. But 30% of that party that's gung ho on every single most insane issue, and that splits their party. So they're going to lose 30% off the top. Right. Of the remaining 70%, 30% will go to the Republicans or not vote at all, which means they can't win. Right. At all. And that's what Trump was able to do. So I think when Trump actually came in, all of a sudden, now you're seeing these things happen where he says, okay, we're going to stop DEI. We're going to stop men and women's sports. There wasn't a huge pushback on that. If you look at it, there really wasn't. Immigration a little bit, but they're arguing against issues that everyone is actually mostly for. How are you going to say, I'm going to argue for, I want more, you know, criminals in our system who come over our border illegally?
Yeah.
You know, and how do you argue for that?
Well, you don't, and that's you know, they cut off their nose to spite their face, really, because you know, and that's where, and I had put in the back of my mind I wanted to talk about this, but the DEI policies and so many of those social policies in the woke issue, there was such a double standard, right? It was, oh, I'm all about the you know, bring in more illegals. You know, they deserve to be here, but they can't stay in my house or my town, right? So double standard, right? You know, I want men in or boys and girls sports, but you know, don't hurt my daughter, or you know, don't you approach my daughter naked in that locker room, right? I mean, that's a double. You can't have it both ways, right? And that's what the DEI policies are being asked to do, is to award failure or promote mediocrity when you know, it's on its face, failure or mediocrity. You just can't reconcile it. And so it's that double standard that people are like, finally, that's gone, right? And DEI is also, you know, it's all the excuses in the world to be a victim. A victim of what? I'm a victim of my sex. I'm a victim because I'm too short. I'm a victim because I have brown eyes. I'm a victim because what else? I mean, it's limitless how you can keep yourself in a victim mentality with DEI firmly in place.
And I think now with Doge, we're finding out now, people are coming to the realization, they're being red pilled to understand that a lot of this stuff is just generated based on money. And I like to look at politics like this. There's two types of people on either side. They're ideologues, people who believe philosophically in what they believe, position by position. Then there are people who are just grifters. They don't care. I mean, yeah, it's fine, right. Whatever. How can I get the angle on this? Bill Clinton was kind of that way. And so here's the thing, and to a lesser extent, Trump was in some ways too, but he was more of a pragmatist. He didn't really care as long as it worked. Right. Some people are like that way, but they want to get paid because of it. If it works, fine, whatever. And so what we're finding out now is that all this DEI stuff was really a caveat, not a caveat, but it was a result of the civil rights movement, of the gay marriage movement, essentially, basically closing the book on civil rights, where everyone pretty much had every single right they ever wanted, but there's still the side that wants to grift. So how can you make more money? Let's go further and further to the left. Now, there's some people who actually go along with that because they're Marxists. They want to truly refashion society. But then there's some that just want to make some money. And what Doge is showing us now is that there's a lot of money behind all of this stuff that with Politico, with all the different organizations out there, USAID, you mentioned that, how they're just funneling these things to overthrow governments, to try and change perception, and in a way so that we can ultimately get more money through these different programs and whatever. So it's really interesting that people are finally seeing now that the man behind the curtain is nothing but a greedy, slimy SOB.
Yeah.
On that. I'm sorry, let me frame it in the way that makes sense for this particular dialogue. How does that work? People come to that realization in terms of healing and going forward. Does it immunize us from future stuff, or is it just a therapeutic kind of thing that we just say, oh? Yeah,
that's an interesting question, because I feel like it does in a way. I look on these last 4 years, nothing occurred in isolation, right? So we had the George Floyd, which begot the BLM riots, which begot more woke and DEI stuff, which begot the trans movement, which begot Ukraine, and then the illegal issue. So, it's all of the, and all four things were kind of happening simultaneously, if you remember, over the last 4 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, to me, and then throw COVID in there. Left COVID out. How could I leave COVID out? But all of these things happened, and Afghanistan happened, and all of these things happened in 4 years, right? To effectuate cultural and social norms. In a way, I just don't think we're going to see that again, at least not for a while. I think it was the perfect storm of a bunch of really weird events and movements that came together, resulting in an ideology that was really kind of dystopic in a way, because DEI is, for me, is a very much a navel-gazing, individualistic type of mindset that doesn't serve the greater society at large. So I don't think we're going to have the patience for this again. I don't think we're now we're investigating the lab in Wuhan. Finally we're kind of coming to the realization that maybe COVID did come from a lab. Remember, we couldn't even say that. Joe Rogan got bounced off of YouTube just for suggesting that ivermectin was effective. So many things, right? It was such a dystopic time period. I think we've learned our lessons. I don't think people are going to let others get away with it this time. And one other comment I will have is that because of being so connected online, it has a way of feeling isolated, even though there's so many of us, right? But being online all the time and looking into a screen all the time has a way of making you feel isolated, or that you're alone in your thoughts on this. And I think a lot of MAGA people thought, okay, I'm just old fashioned. This does not resonate with me at all. I cannot believe I'm doing this. And we didn't know, I feel like that we were actually the majority, not the minority, until this election, because we kept being told to stay home, stay by ourselves, stay away from other people, don't talk, don't have gatherings, don't do all these things. So there was no discourse, there was no sharing of ideas, or else. Gosh, if you lived in Minneapolis, they were going door to door and reporting your neighbor. And it was ridiculous how out of hand things got. I don't think the American public is going to let that happen again. I really don't.
Yeah. And one thing you made up a good point there is that we had because Twitter was a non-starter. Meta was a non-starter. The only thing we had remotely was Telegram, maybe, which was pretty big, but it was still very much dispersed. The only thing centralized we really had was Parler.
I was going to say Parler was it.
And Parler was crushing it.
Yeah.
But then we realized something called infrastructure and like AWS or Amazon web services. Basically, even though you have Parler, it still runs on an infrastructure, on a backbone. And that can be taken because guess what? Amazon owns that, right? There's only a few of them. Amazon has one, Facebook has one, Google has one. There's like 3 or 4 other big ones. IBM has one. But we realized that if you don't have a backbone, they can take everything down.
Yeah, I think, you can go away. Yeah, and we watched that happen overnight. I'll never forget that.
We'll talk about depressing when Parler went down. That was depressing.
Oh, I was all about some Parler, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh man, if they can turn that off, like that, then I think everybody thought, okay, I can be run out on a rail. Me individually, my career, my social circle, I can be snuffed out just for saying the wrong thing. I can be blackballed overnight, within minutes, right? And nothing drove it home more clear than Parler going down. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so when Elon Musk took over Twitter, I think that's the beginning of the comeback for Trump, I believe.
I would agree with that. Yeah. When that happened. And then, we also saw that there were some ghosts in the machine, definitely, the minute that Biden was removed from the ticket. We knew that all bets were off at that point. And because that happened so quickly, right? That if the machine doesn't want you there, the machine will make sure that you are not there. And nobody's untouchable. Even Biden, who just days before said, "Oh, I'm fit as a fiddle." Nope. Yeah.
And again, we're learning now that a lot of this stuff is just driven by and this is a whole nother topic probably,
right?
A type of swamp that is just unimaginable. Because we're seeing U.S. aid and things I've seen so far is just incredible how those tentacles are out everywhere. And we just dealt with that. What about other organizations like, I don't know, Department of Defense?
Right.
What about education? What about, whatever? Right. I mean, there's opportunities for these people to get rich. And we're always wondering, how can people get rich so quickly? And they've only been in office 2 years.
Yeah, these people who are making $174,000 a year, but they're worth $5.3 million. How does that? Maxine Waters lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion. Paid her daughter to be her assistant, $100,000 a year for 10 years, and is now worth about 5.7 million, I believe, is what I saw. As a public servant, this is who? What? How does that happen? Now we're really questioning all of it. And isn't Maxine Waters? She's up there in Maryland. Is she Maryland?
She's in California.
Oh, that's right. She's California. Who was that? I was thinking somebody else from Maryland. Crockett? is Jasmine Crockett in Maryland?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
I'm from Maryland, so I don't. Yeah, I
I know you're.
I try to stay away from Maryland.
I got you. Well, and yeah, I mean, now we're all seeing, and how brilliantly timed was suggesting taking down the Department of Education right after the announcements of the latest NAEP scores, right? The National Education Association of Education.
Talk about that a little bit. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh my gosh. So the NAEP scores, and for those of you who don't know, I used to teach public school about 20 years ago. But the NAEP scores have always been the standard that has come out to say how public schools are doing with reading and math. They look at fourth graders, eighth graders, and seniors in grade school, and they test based on DP, or Department of Public Education aggregated test data, how the achievement levels for students. So this year's NAEP scores just came out for fourth graders, and I believe, if my memory serves, 63% of fourth graders are not negative reading on grade level for reading. For math, 67% of fourth graders are not on grade level for math. So so what does that translate as? Over half of your classroom needs either reading or math remediation.
Wow.
You can't teach new skills because they don't have basic skills in order to be on grade level to even teach the new material. We have to teach remedial reading skills, remedial math skills in fourth grade. But what are they testing on? They're testing on the standards and objectives for fourth grade. So if you're teaching remedial skills all the time, you're not teaching the skills that they should be knowing on fourth grade. So there's going to be a gap. And with each year, that gap gets wider and wider and wider, and then is reported out on that fourth grade end of year testing. So the public schools are broken. They're not working. And now they're infused with second language learners, right? That, they have to be served. But there's not enough time. There's not enough personnel. There's not enough Spanish speaking, or I think in Guilford County alone, there are something like 54 languages that are spoken in Guilford County. Truly diverse. Mm-hmm. Who's teaching these kids English, right? And how many of those kids are only from single language speaking households and then go to public school and have to learn in English? Are they learning? Clearly not. So, school choice, more homeschooling, more parochial schooling is where we need to go with this. And Trump understands that. And anybody who's sent their kids to public school understands that, understands where we're at. So, closing these agencies that are full of, we throw millions and millions of dollars at education, and we always say that the teachers aren't being paid enough and the schools are in decrepit conditions and all of these things. And it gets worse and worse and worse. So I don't think that throwing money at it is the answer. And if we need to, and quite honestly, only a very small percentage of federal funding is funding actual schools. Tax base in counties and state money is what funds public schools, not federal money.
So what's the federal money for then?
Huh?
What's the federal money doing then?
The federal money is usually for things like Title I, impoverished schools, and free lunch, right? So your any public school that has more than 40, I believe it's 47% of their school population on free or reduced lunch qualifies for Title I funds, meaning they get an extra infusion of cash from the feds on an annual basis to help their students, because overwhelmingly these schools are lower achieving in reading and math and all basic skills.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't know how you solve that problem, because whenever you this is the same thing with the housing market or with Fannie and Freddie. Whenever you subsidize failure, then you get more failure because they want more money.
Well, and everybody says and has said for years that the answer to that is Head Start, right? The preschool program, but they've done numerous studies with Head Start. Head Start doesn't work. They've tested the kids in Head Start for, skills and what have you, that they're learning to take into kindergarten and beyond. Their progress is negligible at best. So,
wow.
So here's Nicole's. You want to hear Nicole's answer?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
This is Nicole's answer for all of you guys who are having babies out there. I don't care how old you are. You start reading to your child, to, with, and by your child. You read to them. You have print material in the home. You read to that boy or girl while the bottle is in their mouth, while you are breastfeeding. You read to that kid all the time, every single day. If that's all you do, you don't have to be smart. You don't have to be college educated. You don't even have to have an 8th grade education. If you can read to your child nonstop, that's all you have to do. That's it. If you just read to them, they will be successful in school. Reading proficiency is indicative of math proficiency. You don't even have to be good at math.
Interesting.
You don't have to teach them any math. All you have to do is read to them. Their math will be fine.
Interesting.
As long as they're good readers, they will be fine with math. Yes, they will.
My son loves to read. In fact, I'll send you a picture that I took yesterday. We're eating. Well, actually, I was actually working from home, and my son was in his book. I mean, he's just in it hard, man, just reading it over the table. We're just having a quiet moment. I'm working on my laptop. He's on the kitchen table reading his book. And I said, this is a moment that I want to capture. So I got my cell phone out, took a video of it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
But it's just, he just loves to read. I just dropped him off. He has like 5 books he's going through right now and reading. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's cool. So let me ask you a question.
It's a literacy issue. Yeah. All of it's a literacy issue. Mm-hmm.
So getting back to education, because getting rid of the Department of Education, I'm trying to frame this back into our little topic here.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to take a little side here, because when you talked about not being able to read and being the literacy level being below standard, whatever, I couldn't help but think about a movie that came out, I think it was 89, maybe. It was called Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman. It's based on a guy out of Patterson, New Jersey, Joe Clark, who's a principal of a school in a really failing school. And there's one scene in this movie. It's an amazing film where in the school is very diverse, blacks and whites, and there's Hispanics, but they're basically cast aside. And so this is one scene in the movie where he gets all the teachers in the school, in the gym, tells them to keep their hands up like this, raise their hand above their heads, whatever. And he goes through a litany of all the things that they're failing, the kids are failing on. He says, I don't blame them. I blame you, whatever. How much longer are you spending after school doing your studies? How much work are you putting into to make sure this kid does this? And he said, now with your hands in the air, he says, this is the feeling of helplessness that they have, but this is also going to be the look they're going to have, but it's only going to be behind the barrel of a gun because they're going to be arrested or being robbed. Right. Mm-hmm. So powerful. And I think, and that was a government system. And what I'm trying to get at and trying to frame it in a loose kind of way to get back to what we're talking about is taking responsibility for ourselves. He went across outside the box, outside of the government. He actually did some things that were kind of like iffy, but just keeping the kids focused, as that was his goal was. So my question to you, Nicole, is now that we have this playing field now that's kind of open and we can kind of do things now, kind of like what wasn't allowed before. Mm-hmm. What kind of attitude or what kind of sense of accomplishment, I'm kind of leading here,
It's okay,
can we have taking these kind of roles and taking responsibility, going to school board meetings now without having to worry about being arrested, or
Right.
taking initiative, without feeling you're going to get canceled. What kind of how would that help us as a country in feeling of ourselves as Americans and putting back without worrying about the left or anyone else for that matter trying to come at us?
Well, I mean,
how was that for
the the sense of responsibility now, I really think is put back in the American people's hands. You are responsible, and I've said this a million times, you're responsible for your own education or lack thereof, right? And, you can get a lot of education with a membership to the library, right? You don't need fancy computers, or anything else. Being able to read print is huge. There are a lot, and we've got kids now that are stuck up in front of computer screens for the majority of the day, and they don't even have the skills to track left to right print, right? So I say take back your education for your children and put them in all kind of enrichment stuff. Take them outside, teach them some real skills. Help them understand how a household works, how to grow basic vegetables, how to take care of a home. All of these things are going unchecked. They're certainly not being taught in school. And so, again, being able to go to a school board meeting and call these people out, it's not on me to make school interesting for my child. It's whoever's there. They need to make it interesting. Well, we can't compete, they say. We can't compete with computers and we can't compete with TikTok. Well, you know what? Then turn the computers off. Leave the cell phones at home. There have been a couple of districts I've heard about that are just not allowing cell phones at all. I think it's Tennessee. They can't even take cell phones to school anymore. Is this necessarily a bad thing? I think we're going to have to get way back to basics here with what we're doing with the American education system and what we're doing at home for kids to get them smart again. Our kids, quite frankly, are a little dumb. And we can blame it on the schools all day long, but, at the end of the day, they spend more time at home than they do in the school building most of the time. So you tell me, who's at home, who's helping, who's running the ship. That's all I got to say about that.
You brought up the fact of TikTok and being able to compete with the various distractions that people have. We are very much in a micro blogging type world here, where if you don't have a soundbite, if you don't have the title, the headline that's capturing enough, or if the person, dare I say, isn't hot, you can swipe left or whatever.
Right.
It's just this attitude, and I think you're right. As I was at my kids' jiu-jitsu the other day, and I don't want to call you, because I just did, I guess. Well, I tell you what, if you're watching it, I'm sorry, this is the fact. But you see kids who are there who are not part of the whatever working. They're all in cell phones. They're all in their laptops or tablets. I saw a kid today, and again, I'm not necessarily judging because who knows? This kid could have been working nonstop, and now this is his one time he could actually watch a tablet. But from our perspective, I saw this kid being dragged with his headphones on and a tablet, and didn't even look up. His mother was actually dragging him along so he wouldn't walk into somebody. And this one video I saw, someone posted on Instagram where a baby was on a cell phone, and they took it from the baby, and she was just crying.
Yes.
Until they put the cell phone back in front of this child. And so I guess what I'm getting at now is that because we have this, because really, let's just face it, and this is kind of a way to frame this whole discussion. It's the movie The Matrix, right? And if I'm spoiling it, I'm sorry, whatever, pause it till later. But The Matrix is essentially, you saw the movie, right?
Matrix? How many times have I seen the movie? Oh, it's one of my favorites. Yes.
But it's basically the plug in, shut up, plug in, and we use you for whatever. And we're plugged in, but now we're deplugged in. So now what do we do? And I think that's to your point.
Right.
Now it's the responsibility on us to take this thing back. So it's not. So yes, at one point, it's kind of good to be spoon fed a little bit or to be provided for. I get it, whatever. But how productive is that? How healthy is that? It's
exactly.
Not. So there's going to be some responsibility for us now that we have this freedom or liberty to actually keep it and then to be responsible with that. Otherwise.
Right. I was in the TSA security line fairly recently at the airport. And I can't tell you how many families I saw with small children, anywhere from 2 to 10, that had an iPad in their hand and headphones on them. And the parents were just guiding them through the chaos that was TSA and everything else, right? All of them had, they weren't paying attention to anything that was happening around them, right? And I was just watching these kids because and they were clueless. They were trying not to bump into people. And one of them was hot and trying to take off his jacket. And the other one, and the kids were, and I was like, what a nightmare. Right. But I didn't, quite honestly, this is not therapist Nicole. This is just Nicole. I didn't feel sorry for anybody because I was like, look, this is a huge learning moment for the child, all right? Because standing in the TSA line is part of what we do, right? It's part of being, it's part of traveling, right? It's the joy of traveling. And we stand in line and we occupy ourselves with what? Our thoughts, and we look around and we stay aware. And we're good stewards in line, right? We walk up, we don't leave big gaps, we pay attention. If somebody else drops their jacket, we help them pick it up, right? We can be, but that is a skill. It is called attending to, right? Attending to our surroundings, being self-aware, being in charge of self, right? You can get on your phone, but you better not leave this huge gap in line because you're going to get the stink eye from everybody. So being able to read social cues. There's so much that could have gone into that teachable moment right there for those kids that was missed because we're on Paw Patrol or we're looking at, I don't even know what on the daggone, iPad. And so then what do you have? Fast forward, my child was telling me, because I used to take the kid in and I would make him read the board. Okay, what gate are we at? What city? What, where do we have to be? What time? Did the gate change? I made him be on it. Poor kid. Never entertained. But he was telling me when he had to fly to San Antonio to go to basic military training, so many of those kids, because he met some other kids who were also going at the airport, he was like, Mom, they didn't have a clue. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know anything about the airport or air travel or, what to do if you had a problem, where to find the bathroom, nothing. And he was like, I said, well, I guess you knew. He was like, oh, yeah, I had to take 2 or 3 of them with me just to kind of get them so that they were squared away. I was like, yeah. And I mean, you take it for granted, but, the other kids, bless their hearts, they didn't know. And I mean, that was scary for them as an adult, as an 18-year-old, to have to deal with that. So, when you're entertaining your kid with the headphones and the iPad and their wet noodle kind of all over that might make it easier for you, the adult, temporarily, but you're not doing your kid any favors. So letting them, we've plugged these kids in and, the jump cutting, the editing, all of the colors, all of the sounds. I mean, it's addictive. There's no question. It's addictive. I can burn up 45 minutes, doing the mind numbing scroll. It's hard for me, and I have some self-discipline. What about a child who has none? That is a skill. We're not teaching self-discipline, and that is a skill. It needs to be learned. Learning how to learn is a skill that has to be learned. So, yeah, we need to roll this all the way back, and start teaching kids real basic stuff.
I'll end this. I know you have to go in a little bit here, but I'll end this on that same note. I'm going to piggyback on what you just said here on two main points. One is Remember the Titans, the movie. And the second one is the fact that I can lean back on my old experiences before we had, even before we had MapQuest, right? And so I'm like you. If my phone is gone, if I'm out somewhere or the phone goes out and I have no charge, I know I'm going to be here for an hour. Inside of me, it's like, almost like, a detox thing going on where I'm like freaking out. But I can resort back to a time in my life where I never had that. And I can recall those skills of doing stuff that can pass the time away. I'll think about making a short story in my head, or I'm thinking about doing things creatively in my mind that kind of pass the time. That's a skill that I can pass on, I guess, like you've done with your child. But also, it's also about letting them make their own mistakes and not coddling them. And that's why I'm bringing up the movie Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington, when the assistant coach, Petey was one of the players, running back or whatever. He quit on the team. And then the assistant coach went to him and was talking to him. It's okay. You can quit on your team. And I know if you've seen the movie, it may not be exactly what it is, but the principle is the same. And then Denzel Washington's character, which is based on a true story, went to the assistant coach and was like, you can't do that. You're coddling him. You're killing him. You are crushing him. You think you're helping him, but you are crushing this man. And he didn't let him get back in the game until the end of the movie. Well, if I was spoiling it, he had to earn his way back into the game. Right. And so I love these strong male characters that are bringing these values into these kids. And so I'm going to leave it there, because I think the takeaway of all of this is, yes, we went through hell. We're happy now. However, with this new liberty, this new found freedom, we have to be responsible with it. Otherwise, we can make worse mistakes, I think, in the long term going forward. I think that's kind of what the founding fathers said. We gave you, this is Benjamin Franklin, that is, we gave you a republic if you can keep it. So, right, Nicole, thank you so much. I'm going to let you have the last word here. Tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can support you, or anything else you can say to close us out here for this good news episode of the Conservative Take.
Absolutely. And good news it is. I think we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief and enjoy a wee bit of enthusiasm for sure. And a high tide raises all boats, and I'm ready. We're about to set sailing for sure. If you want to work with me, I am accepting new clients. So we'll have contact information in the show notes on the bottom. High Performance Counseling. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook, because I'm that old. But yeah, I'm still there. Most of my clients come through word of mouth anyway. So there I am. Would love to work with you and level up your functioning and level up your thinking and your performance in work and in life. And away we go. It's going to be real interesting next time we meet as to what has transpired at that point. It seems like the world is watching, and I'm here for it.
100% agree. Thank you so much, Nicole. I love that. And everyone else, support Nicole. Look in the show notes below and get a hold of her if you know anyone. And by the way, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who could use your help right now, especially those, you know what I mean? So give her a holler. She's an awesome woman. I've used her myself in the past, and she's really, really, really fantastic. So everyone else, thank you so much. I hope this was uplifting as it was for me. Thanks again, Nicole Kaufman, our right therapist, and we will see you guys in the next one. God bless.